Hey, Rani here. Shall we make a game? So, last time we made a good start on the protagonist. I can see straight away, fresh pair of eyes, a bunch of things I want to change. Arms are way too long, legs are far too far apart, and as much as this face texture is great, it's way too high detail. But I'm kind of curious, how does it look kind of in engine? Now, can't get, it'd be a while before I can get it in engine really, but I can do a render and see how it kind of looks at this kind of resolution. So it'd be that one. Ah, you guys can't see that. Wonderful. Well, trust me, there's a render window right here. Actually, maybe I can kind of like, oh God, what am I doing? How did I do that? I didn't mean to do that. Anyway, I think you can get a render window in here. Is this one? Render results? Ah, so yeah, this is like let's make this a bit bigger. Is there a way to maximize one of these? Don't know. Anyway, it gets bigger. So yeah, the low resolution kind of makes it more uniform, but again, it's still way too high. It'll have that kind of moire. It's not actually moire effect, but it'll look a bit like a moire effect just because there'll be too much detail in a small space. All right, let's get rid of that top thing I just made. Let's get everything back to normality. And I've only got an hour, so I can't really keep messing around. But while I'm working on this, I'm going to just maybe sort of talk about like some thoughts I've kind of had on this. Again, like you walk away from it, you come back to it, and you think, oh, maybe I'm actually not doing things quite right. So what I was actually thinking about was tone, right? Because this is obviously meant. Oh, I'm just going to reduce the resolution this a bit. Yeah. The reason it's ended up so high resolution is because I was trying to make the nose thinner. I'm actually just going to share a texel half and half over the seam, which kind of breaks some of the rules, but yeah, so tone. Because obviously I'm doing this as a sort of like a Halloween release, which means that it needs a degree of spookiness, but spookiness kind of comes in many forms, and I didn't separate these layers out and now they're all merged together. That's great. Spookiness comes in many forms, right? And when I actually sort of take the kind of like first, say, minute of the game and the last minute as I kind of plan it to be, and I kind of play it in my head, it's honestly just a bit too dark and a bit mean-spirited. And it's almost got me thinking like, well, would I actually want to play this game? And I think the answer is probably no. So this has got me thinking that maybe I actually need to adjust it very slightly. And this may or may not have been inspired by this accidental sort of slightly toothy grin that I sort of accidentally painted on this guy. I wasn't really intending to do that. I'm like, maybe this game in its final form needs a bit more levity than I'm planning on putting in it. After all, Halloween is meant to be a celebration, sort of. It's meant to be fun. So we're still like before the point at which I've actually written much, or well, any actual hard dialogue for this game. And I am thinking I am going to dial it back a lot in terms of just mood. Also, I don't have a huge amount, well, really any writing experience. I'm like, maybe some of the stuff I was going to include in this game was a bit too dark for it and needs to be, if someone's going to write that, it needs to be someone with a bit more experience writing than me. So I'm just going to move these sideways very slightly. There's a lot of subjects that maybe should be dealt with by someone who knows what on earth they're talking about, someone who knows how to write about more sensitive subjects. Yeah, just because the dream the game is kind of based on ended very dark doesn't necessarily mean that the game itself has to be dark. Okay, how are we doing in terms of... You know what? I was expecting to have to do more touch-up than that. That's actually turned out okay. It's not turned out stellar or brilliant, but that's actually gone all right, given all I did was all I did was scale it down a bit. And we've still managed to retain a lot of the character it had, which is neat. I was kind of anticipating to lose a bit more of it by doing that. So I'm gonna see if I can make the Because again, I didn't really see that really kind of like, you know, toothy grin when I was working on it. It's one of those things where you stare at something long enough and you lose the ability to kind of critically analyze it. I don't want to look like completely miserable, but I didn't want him to have quite that. Oh no, he's very happy. Yeah, he's meant to be in a slightly perilous situation, so it would make sense for him to have like a slightly less jubilant, jovial demeanor. That's probably more like it. I've accidentally given him quite a chunky chin, so let's get rid of that too. Oh, that's made his chin very thin. Let's have a look at that in context. You know, I think that actually kind of works. So the next thing is I've actually made this kind of like weird sort of square of dark pixels. That looks sort of weird. Let's see if we can't fix that. It just kind of like doesn't look intentional. Okay, that's looking really good, especially from a distance. Okay, pretty happy with that. Next thing I kind of realized, the second I kind of looked away and looked back at it, is the colors are a bit weirdly washed out. I think maybe just darkening them a bit. Oops, I've still got the palette lock on. Why does that feature even exist? I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but I don't know what it is. Let's reduce the brightness a lot. See where that gets us. We have to do a few more attempts at this. Bit of saturation. Oh god, I've turned him into a kind of zombie. That wasn't that was not my intent. Yeah, skin tones are really hard to get right. They really are. Just looking for a bit more kind of, you know, shadow to this guy. Can we desaturate him maybe? Pull it down a bit more. Yeah, there we go. How's it look in context? Hey, that looks pretty good from a distance, doesn't it? That's really kind of picked out the highlights, giving them a bit more contrast between the highlights and the shadows. This kind of like darker mid-tone looks a bit strange though, but I think it might actually be that the lighter mid-tone is actually wrong. You know, it's a bit too far away from the highlight color. Yeah, that's looking better. Hell yeah. So one of the things I do actually want to do, a bit of kind of like, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but whatever, is when the angel kind of busts in through the window, he's going to be, you know, like grabbing his glasses off the side and putting glasses on. So there are going to be glasses over these eyes. So I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about how I'm actually going to pixel in the eyes because you're barely going to be able to see them. Never up close anyway. There's always going to be glasses in front of them. Let's do a bit of shadow under here. A touch of shadow on the head just to see if we can get a bit more. The hair's meant to be very thin, but it'll still cast a bit of shadow. Right, there we go. And it's still slightly more detailed than, say, the surrounding environment and his own clothes, but I feel like it's within the margin of error. I mean, a face, human beings are very, very good at recognizing them. You will want a bit more detail than anything else. So let's sort out the pose a bit. We can turn on the symmetry for this because we're adjusting something that's the symmetry tools should have no problem with. Move the feet slightly close together. That's a bit more of a natural pose. Now he has this sort of weird. I was trying to give him a bit of a stoop, wasn't I? Because he's admittedly he'll probably be very, very rarely standing up in this game, but I think I might have gone a bit far. It's kind of standing a bit weirdly. Let's slide this down the back a bit and then push it in. Just a bit. And then maybe pull the back out just a tiny bit. There we go. How's that kind of look from the side? Oops, I've kind of given him a hoodie. That's not where I was planning on going with that. And then, yeah, that'll probably do. Okay, next thing is I'm pretty sure the arms are too long. It's always difficult to judge this. The hands are also maybe slightly too big, so let's grab those. Scale them slightly. the same with the elbow. That's still slightly too long, I think. So it's probably like super obvious at the time, but you just don't see it until you step away. Now, one of the things about the animation is it's not going to be done using bones, it's going to be done using keyframes. So I'm going to be able to adjust like the length of the arms for like various poses and stuff. So if we end up with like not quite enough or too much sort of space, we can sort that out later. Oh, that's weird. That window's got stuck open. Anyway, right, next up, we need to do the jacket. So at the moment it's a bit flat looking again. I think it needs a bit more shadow. I always go way too soft for the shadows. Okay, and how's that look? So I need to think now, what kind of material is this? Because I'm thinking it's going to be kind of like a cotton, you know, like slightly rough. It's not shiny. It's not like well, it's not like this. It's not leathery. It's more kind of diffuse and matte. So it wouldn't have like big, well, it wouldn't have small patches of light like this. It would have kind of like sort of like very rounded, kind of like a soft patch. I've turned my symmetry tool off again, haven't I? Yes, I have. There we go. Yeah, because I was just trying to figure out roughly where the light was going to go last time. I kind of ran out of time to work on any of the clothes tool. So let's have a look at that. And let's try and figure out where the highlight should go. Because usually you have kind of like a bit of you have a sort of like, not a highlight, but like a lighter patch on the kind of like upper chest that you can like on top of the sort of the pecs, and that's slightly too low. Let's bring that up a bit. Want to keep a bit of shadow underneath the collar because we want it to really stand out. It's really obvious that it's indeed a collar and not just, I don't know, a differently coloured piece of jacket. Okay, it's looking okay. Has resizing the arms done much to the textile density? Not really. We didn't actually resize it that much. It was already pretty close. Right. Let's figure out what else I'm doing with this. Or so maybe then we have this kind of like darker patch kind of come underneath here. I go back up to here. Does that look good? Does that look good? That's starting to look a bit more right, because generally the arms will be by the sides. Generally, so they'll usually be casting a shadow in that general area, so that's kind of okay. They've got a bit of a sort of damp patch under each arm. Oh, that's weird. I've somehow ended up with two. There's a colour over there that's very similar to this one. I've somehow selected the wrong one. Not entirely sure how I've managed that. We can fix it. Don't know. Afterwards, I'm going to have to go through and basically scrub out all the pixels around here that don't actually contribute to the image because I forgot to delete the kind of like guide layer before I closed the file last time. Right, so it's meant to be a slight depth difference between, say, the jacket and the shirt, and at the moment I'm not feeling that, I'm not really seeing that. Part of the problem is that, of course, it's 82 pixels wide and I can't really have like a visible, you know, if I did say like this, there'd be like a visible depth difference, but I think that'd be too big a gap. Maybe not, actually. Can we do that? Yeah, I think we can get away with that. And then maybe just a bit of a highlight down here, not too much, but just a bit down here, just kind of like... Oh, I've got some major UV distortion done happening there. What's going on there? Do I? I feel like I do. maybe I move it a pixel that way either side just to kind of correct for that. That looks a bit better. Yeah, you're more likely to see the front of this going your other side, so I want the distortion on the side if I can have it, if I can choose. Yeah, that's good. Oh, no, don't do that, don't do that. Still not quite feeling, maybe. Maybe I need to bring the darker shade out a bit more. And then sort of have kind of more shades in here. A bit more of a gradient, you know, rather than just these two shades. I think it's quite enough. Oh yeah, that's made a big difference. Just having more shades. Again, I've ended up with weird colours all the way up here. How's that happened? Oh, I wonder if it's because I copied in this. Right. Right, when I've saved it as a PNG file, what's happened is, because there's been this kind of like Blender generated UV map underneath it, it's had to find colours that are close, so it's just grabbed random colours from the palette to fill it in. I don't know what these are green. Oh, I guess that's the background colour from here. Right, what's it doing? Yeah. Next dark colour from there. Shade all these in. And maybe have it come down slightly further. Just a touch further down. Okay, next problem I think is that this sort of like t-shirt tone, way too bright. That's more like it. Now it looks like it's kind of in shadow. Yeah, now it actually looks like it's nestled between the sides of the jacket rather than, I don't know, something else. Okay, all right, that's looking okay. I think I might give him a pocket here, just because you've got this kind of like empty space with nothing in it. It just makes sense to put a pocket there, right? Let's go for a darkest colour on this side. That should probably... Oh no, that's way too dark. Doesn't look like a pocket, looks like some kind of alien invader. Again, hang on, we've ended up with... How have we ended up with this colour again? What keeps happening? I keep getting the wrong colour. I think the fact that it kind of runs along the side of a shadow line isn't helping. It's not really looking like a pocket at that point. It's just too long there because the yeah, I've got the stretched out UVs on the side, so like I made a small pocket and it ends up quite long. Okay, next up, let's curve this in a bit, see if that looks better. It does. You are going to see this goes back quite a lot. It's going to turn away from the camera pretty often, so the back needs to be pretty... I quite often don't do a great job of the texture on the back of characters, but this is one where it needs to be done right. Again, how is this different shade crept in? What's going on? There's one there as well. Is someone sneaking around inside my A sprite and moving colours around? Fortunately, we don't have any real technical, technical restrictions to work to, so it's not that big a deal if colours end up leaking from one place to another. It's just a bit weird when it happens. Okay, so the back. I have made things a bit difficult for myself here because there's a seam right down the middle. but we are using the mirror modifier, so the mirror symmetry tool. That's, God, English is a hard language. We've got the symmetry tool on, so we do have some assistance. So we're going to want a bit of a shadow here because the head is kind of towards the back. And we're going to want to see if we can line that up with the front a bit. So say there, is that going to line up? Nope. Ah, hang on. I think these are actually slightly differently unwrapped. Yeah, they're very slightly different widths. I want a straight edge there. I wonder if I can just slightly narrow that. I'm not going to lose much by doing that, but it means I can then line up the texels along there and have a less visible seam. Oh, that doesn't look great. And I think I've just made it worse. Yep, I've definitely made that worse. Grab a darker skin tone, put it in there. Probably adjust that a bit as it kind of, yeah, that goes back way too far. Wouldn't have visible skin that far back. That'd be a very strangely shaped jacket and shirt if that was the case. Okay then. And a rough kind of like light patch, usually over the shoulder blade on the jacket. See if I can make it meet in the middle of the light, because this isn't going to be a tight jacket, so you wouldn't be able to see the kind of indent of the spine normally, so we can cut that out. I've sort of accidentally made a heart. No, I'll leave that there though. I'm worried about the game being a bit too dark. Maybe it needs a bit of heart in it. But it's sort of like a slightly lighter dark brown there, just acts as kind of like a boundary between. And again, hang on, that's a different brown. This might not come from the stream, but like that is not the same brown as that. How does that keep happening? I'm sampling the colours from from the neighbouring pixels, and I keep getting the wrong colour somehow. And they're different colours right next to each other. How did that happen? Because it can't be one's left over, because I grabbed the whole thing and I went, yeah, get that colour and replace it with that one. Don't know. Very strange. Something weird is afoot. Let's join that to that. See how that looks. Might be a bit weird to have like a highlight right over the whole back. Again, it might not. Might put some detail in here, just like a bit of. Does that? Oh, it does. I was just wondering, does it run all the way down to the bottom? Yes, it does. Just do something like that, just to give it a bit of detail down there. Not too much though. And in fact, it might turn to a highlight at the front, just because it would usually stick out a bit at the front or the back, right? Let's make that shadow all the way around. It doesn't quite look right as a highlight. And at the moment, this is giving the impression that it kind of bulges, which isn't quite right. I think I have actually changed my mind at some point without realising it, how this jacket's being worn, as it's now starting to look less bulgy than it was before. It's kind of like, before it was almost kind of like a winter jacket, and it was very kind of bulgy. I mean, he is meant to be kind of like wearing it because it's relatively chill in this room, but it's not like a big sort of, yeah, what do they call them, shell suits? No, it's not a shell suit. That was like the 80s, wasn't it? Okay, let's get a bit more of the arms and see if we can get this thing entirely covered by the end of the stream. Because if we can do that, we can say the model's kind of finished, even if it's actually not. Also, at some point, need to get onto the accessories for him because he's going to have a stick and he doesn't have one yet. Let's have a look at the layout of the UV island for the hand. So the top is going to be kind of his fist. So his finger will probably run around there. Yeah, he's going to have kind of like a thumb going that way. See if we can hint at a bit of kind of like a curve by putting a shady pixel in the corner. Not going to do much with the amount of pixels I give myself, but we can do something. How's that look? That might not look great. No, it does not look great. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be trying to pick out the individual fingers given how little I've given myself to work with. Yeah, that kind of gives a hint that there's a finger there and then there's a thumb there. If I run a bit of a darker colour around there, that kind of gives you the feeling there's a thumb here and then there's kind of like a finger running around there, and you can see the fingers kind of running down here. And the last finger would be shorter because it's a little finger. Not going to get a huge amount of detail out of that, but we can give like a rough hint of a hand. But then the bit that I don't actually know what it's called. It's the bit on your hand that kind of where the I guess it's just sort of the end of like your forearm, right? You've got that kind of like bit of the bone kind of sticks out a bit. Except it's on the wrong side of the hand. Ignore that. It should be on that side, not that side. Okay, we can run the remainder across here. So that is going to join up to like there. This is where like hands, when you're doing a really low poly, they get really confusing to unwrap because you don't have the whole thing when you're doing them like, well, I say high poly, when you're actually modeling fingers, you normally have something that looks like a glove on the unwrap. It looks like a glove with no hand in it. Whereas when it's this low poly, it's just a bunch of pixels, really. Okay, I might get rid of that pixel there just because it has a seam. And we do have a slightly annoying thing that we have a different number of pixels along this edge to this edge, but it's not really avoidable because it's a triangle. It doesn't really nicely match up. Yeah, it can't be made to match up nicely between the two sides. It's just not physically possible. Mathematics is annoying sometimes. Some shadow in this corner. And given the tiny amount of resources I've given myself, I don't think that's terrible. I feel like I could have done worse than that. Just feel like maybe this kind of light patch is a bit too big. But if I put any detail in there, it's going to cause like a discontinuity on the edge. There's one there, but it's really small. Okay. And from a distance, you kind of squint and like, you think about how it's going to look at the kind of resolution that this is going to be running at. Let's just do a render. You're not going to be able to see that kind of detail anyway. That's all you're going to see at the game's sort of native resolution. And like putting it through just the sort of smudgy low resolution render really does kind of make it look way more coherent, right? Now, the colors are a bit brighter on the character than the surroundings. It's slightly brighter than it should be, but there is a level of intent to that because, of course, we want the character to kind of stand out from the surroundings. We don't want them to just become, well, literally part of the furniture. That wouldn't be ideal. So yeah, I feel like this bit here needs a bit more work on it. It just doesn't quite look right, and obviously I've got to do the arms. The legs are actually come out pretty good, given I basically just sort of like really quickly sketched them in, what was it, like 2 or 3 minutes last time? Now, I think what's happening, because I think I just saw it happen, is that we've actually managed to, due to that thing where it tried to find the nearest colours in the palette for like a whole bunch of random colours made by layering a Blender UV map on top. There's a lot of cases where they just happen to be close or similar, and I'm just not noticing that they're wrong because they're close enough. Like that there, that was wrong. That can't always have been wrong though, right? I would have noticed by now. Oh wait, I was like, reload this image, why is nothing happening? It's because I'm reloading the render. Okay, where am I going to put the shadow? Because I'm probably going to want some under here, because generally the arms are going to be at the side, and you're going to want a bit of occlusion between the body and the arms, so it's sort of along there. I'm going to smooth it out a bit, because you shouldn't really have too many hard edges on the bottom of the arms like that. Then just carry on along there. That looks okay. I might make that shadow a bit more shallow though, because like I don't want to give the impression that this guy's kind of like a, that looks vaguely like a muscle from a distance. And like this guy's, it's not the point of this character. He's not he's not strong. For like, even though I'm sort of like beginning to drift towards more kind of spooky and less sort of depressing. A big part of all horror games is kind of like disempowerment of the player, and then allowing them to work their way back up to power. Again, we've ended up with a different colour than what I expected. How did that happen? Huh? Oh, I think it might be a consequence of this lock alpha button. I think it's doing some weird stuff. Because that, when I was trying to pick that colour, it was picking that one. That was weird. That was very weird. I still had the lock alpha on from last time, and I was doing lots of quick shading. And I think that might be a factor, because if it has to lock alpha and it's trying to pick a colour that's meant to be semi-transparent and I mean, who even knows what that would do? Depends on how they've implemented the lock alpha feature, I guess. Again, we've ended up with a brown that's not the right one. Why is that suddenly happening so often? Anyway, we'll go there. We'll get there, and I said right before, I think we've nearly actually got there. So let's add some creases, particularly along the back where like he's not going to be able to see them there. So there's probably going to be quite a few creases along the back. Mostly kind of centering on the armpits and stuff like that, because that's where you're going to have a lot of folding, a lot of sort of fabric. This is currently using the symmetry tool, so it looks a bit weird. It kind of looks like he's got like a bird print on his back, which isn't really what it's supposed to be. Let's fix that. Let's change where the creases are. Maybe make the creases less deep if they're causing kind of like weird patterns. There we go, it's more like it. So yeah, now for balance, let's put more of a crease on the left side down here. Okay, and then we need to bring the shadow in to kind of fill the other side of the creases. It looks kind of weird that the crease is only affecting the highlights, not the shadows. They're not super deep, but it should still at least draw a little bit of shadow in. Yeah. Okay, all right. Next up, let's do a bit down here just to break up this kind of like large flat area. It looks a bit strange. Yeah, it looks more like it. Yeah, that is looking pretty good to me. I'm sure that tomorrow I'll look at this and go, oh my God, what on earth did I do? But today I'm looking at that and I'm like, that looks pretty good. Next up, I need to finish off these shoes, or rather, kind of start them. Or maybe I should just clean up the UVs a bit. There's bits all over the place at the minute. Yeah, let's sort the UVs out. Let's clean up a bit before we move on. Yeah, so I was just double checking out the symmetry tool off because the head has a different line of symmetry to the rest. Okay, that's all the pixels covered, isn't it? Yes. And now we're going to delete some pixels out the middle. Do we have any other stray pixels that must be eliminated? You. Missing one there. I'm probably going to put this through a tool before I put it into Engine, which it's called a UV padder. It basically extends all UV islands out by a single pixel. Not in the model, but in the texture, just so that you can be pretty sure that even with all the rounding error my renderer is going to introduce, it's never going to have like a transparent pixel on the edge of, say, a character's arm or something. All these pixels here need to go. So we can actually use the line tool with the transparent color. Did I leave a gap between the hand and... Yes, I did. So over here... Oh, I could actually turn the symmetry tool on if I was thinking. Yeah, I'm going to do that before I go into the more complex rest of it. Man, character modeling is really time consuming. I didn't really... until you time these things, you don't realize this takes way longer than making environment pieces. It makes sense because they're way more intricate. And I guess the human brain's more picky about things it's really good at recognizing, like human faces. I suppose the other thing is wrap's more complicated because it's organic. It doesn't tend to be all straight edges. Get rid of all you guys. Get rid of all you guys. We check these are actually like the colors they're meant to be. Yep, they are. You guys. Oops, it's still the line tool. And a single line across there. And there's a few pixels down there we can clean up as well. Okay. Now, I might reuse this jacket colour for the shoes, although I think it should probably be a bit darker. Now, looking at this big pile of pixels, I'm not entirely sure. We're having the same situation as the hand, where I'm like, those are pixels, all right. I couldn't tell you exactly what they are from looking at them. So the top of the shoe is kind of those two bits. So it's this bit. Kind of do that, see where it ends up. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. And then here it does continue onto the sides. So let's give this a bit of a shine on top, as though it is kind of like polished up. Let's make the highlight as narrow as possible. Let's see if we can actually skip 2 levels of brightness just to really make the highlight punch. I may yet end up making a new palette for the shoes, just because I'm looking for quite a bit of a different shine to them in the jacket. Yeah, the highlight needs to come way further up, and maybe a bit wider at the top, and needs to terminate for the bottom. No, that actually looks not terrible. I'll take it. And I think this is the bottom of the shoe, so I'll leave that a little bit later. Thinking about it, I'm glad this game design has a lot more environments in it than people, given how long it's taken me to make this one guy. I'm definitely not, because I made this character model from scratch, but I'm definitely not going to do that for the next few. I'm going to copy and paste this guy and use him as kind of like a base. Just to save a lot of time if we can help it. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I am going to darken these palettes just a touch, because they're a bit too bright from my view. Let's use a bit more of the dark color before we do that. Because at the moment it's actually quite a light color for kind of what is supposed to be a very dark sort of fabric in shadow. Same goes for this. This is way too bright. It's a certain Rolling Stones song that would be very applicable right now. Okay, now he fits in a bit better. Just a bit. Oh, he's got very, very, very white hair. I didn't actually notice that. Let's turn down the shirt a bit more as well. Now texturing the bottom of this. That's right. I put like a bit of a strip there that I can just shade in. So that should all be dark, and that should all be dark, right? Near enough. I might put a slight touch of lightning in the middle. Not lightning as in, like zap bang, but a bit of extra brightness. And in the middle, it should have just a touch of shirt on it. Yep, that'll do. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. That's separate. Oh, the hair. I still haven't done the hair. Just darken it a lot. Okay, that's our protagonist pretty much done. I'll do his walking stick. Walking stick is next. This should be dead easy. It's just a three-sided cylinder, right? Okay, so two selected. And the cylinder. Preferably one with fewer sides than that, if you please. How long is an average walking stick? They're gonna be like I'm going to say 1.2 meters, just as a complete sort of, lick your finger, hold it in the wind kind of thing. And the radius. Now, the complexity of like, even if I knew that it was exactly like 5 centimeters across, which I don't know, I think it's about 3. Because it's a triangle making out of, it's going to look both wider and narrower depending upon which angle you look at it from. So I'm going to go for slightly wider, I think. Also, the fact that this is going to be on a very, very imprecise renderer means we want it to be quite chunky just to make sure it doesn't disappear. Yeah, let's go for, I doubt any walking stick ever is 80 millimeters thick, but that's what we're going for. So, bit of rotation. Oh, wait, okay, I understand why. I've kind of screwed myself over a bit here, haven't I? Because I rotated the character model, right? And then when I created the cylinder, it's pointing along global Y, which then means that when I rotate relative to the character, it actually ends up doing kind of like an off-axis rotation, because we're rotating we created the walking stick pointing along global X, and then I'm rotating it along local X, which isn't the same thing. So let's just try that again. Add a cylinder. Hopefully it remembered all my settings. Align to, there's no local option. It's just like view, world, or 3D cursor. Okay, so I'm just going to clear the rotation on this and add the walking stick properly. Now when I rotate it, there we go. And unwrapping this is going to be a breeze. I'm probably just going to get 1 or 2 pixels at the side of it. But I'm actually just going to scale it down so it's like it's all, there's no transparent bits on it. Stick it somewhere where it should be visible and do a test render at target resolution and see how it looks. Pull this down a bit. How does it look? Oh, actually, I was thinking it was going to need to be way, way thicker than that, but that's actually occupying a lot of pixels. So I can slim that down, say, make sure that making sure it was a medium point, so it wasn't going to like scale it down relative to this marker. Let's scale it down to say half that thickness and render it again. That's about right. That's thicker than it should be, but it's very clearly showing up. Right. Get this out of the way. So it's a bit taller than this trouser, so if I include the bit with the shoes, I can probably just scale it to kind of match that, to fill this gap between the bottom of the hands and the bottom of the overall UV element, just like that. Make it 1 pixel across, because that'll do, and we'll maybe just like vary the color on the sides of it, so maybe we can have one side of it kind of like pointing towards him, one catching the light. And the top, we can just make that occupy a single pixel. That'll probably do, honestly. We're going to want to snap it to the center of a pixel though, because otherwise it'll kind of flicker between each of the neighboring pixels. If we have this kind of like overlapping this, it'll actually sample one of these 4 pixels at random depending upon how the rounding falls. At some point, I actually need to write the code that does character animation. It's not going to be super complex because I'm going to be using the flipbook approach, but you still need something to manage that and synchronize elements of the animation to, say, movement. Let's reuse these colors that we used for wood earlier. So I'll move that to there. Did that line up? Yes, it did. So it's going to be, most of it's going to be roughly the same color, but then we're going to get darker towards the bottom, as you know, to clear the floor, and it's mostly going to be in the guy's hands. The top's going to be slightly darker as well. Let's bias it a bit though. Let's make this highlight happen roughly halfway up. So it's, oh, and wrapped it upside down. Oop, and then I didn't change the snapping mode before I rotated it. And I grabbed the pixel, I grabbed the top and bottom face. It's all going wrong, just how we like it. Yeah, there we go. And then for the other sides, I'm just going to do something very similar. Maybe just have the shadows a bit longer. Just a tiny bit of highlight on it. And then somewhere between the two for the third side, just so it's got a bit of variation as it turns around. Yep, that'll do. So a quick look at it in the, I wish it would stop popping up the window with the render result in it when I've got a render result over here. I might adjust these colors a bit later. I have kind of lost some of the contrast. You won't normally be T-posing in front of the window like that, so it might not be that big of an issue in game. Let's try and sort of say there. Yeah, I might have to adjust these colors later on just because I feel like I've lost it with the contrast between the foreground and background there. Or something else I could do, given this is meant to be kind of like very PlayStation 1 or maybe even DS inspired in terms of visual style, is the DS had a lot of games with like that cell shading where they did the 1 pixel outline, right? I think it was actually like a special anti-aliasing mode or something. Right, so I guess the next thing we need to model is our antagonist, who we're going to spend most of the game with. So let's get this guy in the corner. You go over there. And yep, that'll do. Yeah. And let's just, how's his sizing looking? I feel like he might be slightly too tall. Yeah, he's slightly too, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I must have had a small amount of size creep as I was working on him because he's 1.9 meters tall, which for, you know, an elderly man, that's pretty tall. Fortunately, we can just quite easily scale him down to say just under 1.7 meters. I think 1.7 meters is about the average for, you know, an adult male. And that looks a bit more in keeping. Right. Next up, we do a angel who is anything but. I did have a concept art for this guy, didn't I? I don't think I ever brought it into Blender though. Opening GIMP in the background. Come on, GIMP. Yeah, GIMP. Nope, not that file, not that file. That file! So, there's our angel there. So yeah, just like, roughly, just kind of like, I was going to do this thing where I kind of like, there's kind of like a slightly technological aspect to the wings. I wasn't quite sure how much to do that. And also, if you've got a limited number of pixels, you can't do anything too intricate. I was actually considering kind of, because doing kind of like diagonals like this and circles at the end, it's not impossible to do a pixel art, but it doesn't tend to look great because you're kind of working against the medium. I was thinking if instead I did kind of like, what's the word for it? Is rectilinear the word? Let's have a look. What's rectilinear? Contained by or consisting of or moving in straight line on lines. Yeah, I like that. Rectilinear. Rectilinear is the word. Rectilinear kind of like circuity shapes. Okay, let's grab you and Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, I will reuse the kind of like old man's the base, but like the things like the legs, because he's kind of like in a sort of like a gown type of thing. I'm sure there's a proper word for the stereotypical attire for an angel that I basically just copied without even realizing I'm copying it from somewhere. But you can't see the legs, so I'm not going to model those. Well, I'm going to unmodel them, as the case may be. And yeah, these polygons down here that are kind of connecting the leg to the rest of the body can go. These can go. And I'm probably going to end up adjusting a lot of the proportions on here just to make it look a bit more flowing and a bit more kind of, I don't know. I don't know what the word really is for it, otherworldly, I guess. I could probably get away with some, get rid of some of these edge loops as well, just because they're not going to be doing a lot for us. I might have shoes visible below, just sort of poking at the bottom there, just so you can kind of see them. We're going with a bit of interesting kind of shape down here as well. So I'm going to spend the polygons that I was previously going to spend kind of subdividing this for kind of like, you know, legs and movement and stuff. Instead of spending giving a bit of kind of like spike, you know, a bit in and out spikiness down here, just to give it a bit more kind of, not texture because it's not textures, but no, I guess texture is a good word for it. Are we in local? Yes, we're in local. It's kind of like that. And I'm probably going to make it asymmetrical because it's meant to be kind of like a flowing sort of gown type thing. It's not meant to be symmetrical. It's meant to have a bit of fluidity to it. Yeah, we can probably do that up and down, to be honest, just start messing around with it and making it less symmetrical than it previously was. And probably make these hang down a lot more because it's meant to be sort of kind of like a robe hanging off it. In fact, I might model something for that. I might just model in a bit of a robe hanging down. Let's collapse this edge. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty good. Oh, I didn't copy. This is one of the things with the symmetry tool in Blender. It's generally really good, but some operations don't mirror, like creating vertices don't mirror. So now I need to rotate. Let's put this back in the middle. And then I can then set the 3D cursor back to the middle as well. And then when I rotate, well, scale around the 3D cursor, it will mess everything up because I left the symmetry modifier on. We'll give it something nice and even. Right. Now, it's going to be kind of like, you know, like more kind of like stereotypical white robes, because one of the things that it's kind of a spoiler about this game is that he's not really an angel, it's just appearing as one. So he's kind of like, you know, drawing on whatever kind of preconceptions and ideas the protagonist might have about what an angel would actually look like, and using them to manipulate the protagonist. So that's my explanation as to why it looks so stereotypically like an angel. It's not laziness, it's intentional, honest. Well, that's nice, man. Subdivided those faces, it actually subdivided the UVs. That's nice. I'm going to make a copy of those pixels and moving to the side. Oh, I still got the symmetry tool on. Keep forgetting to turn it off in every context in which I operate. Oh, I also doubled up his cane. That wasn't supposed to happen. Let's grab all of this because it's going to be, you know, the shadows are going to be in roughly the same place. So we can put it over there. And then we can grab everything about this guy and we can move it over here. But I've got the snap. Yeah, I need to adjust it when it gets there because I've got the snap Yeah, I've got the snap in the wrong mode. So what's happened there is because I've got the snap set to kind of like the corner of a pixel, it's actually ended up putting his nose kind of off center. So if I grab all the way down there, there we go. Right, and I'm also thinking about giving the guy more hair. He's going to have like the whole stereotypical halo and stuff as well, because he's like trying to really project the image that he really is an angel. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, I think. So let's draw to a close. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great evening, and I'll pick this back up tomorrow at the same time, and we'll get started on the angel, who might be a bit quicker to do given we've already got a good start of a base mesh and lots of UVs and stuff. But there are some additional features that are going to be there. So I'll see you then, and once again, have a great evening.